Okay, guys, welcome back. We're going to go over chapter 7, organizational planning. I can get my screen to work. Okay. So first talking about planning. Planning is deciding to advance what it wants to do, who is to do it, how it is to be done, and when it is to be done. It's pretty simple. You guys all know what planning is. Anytime you have projects, tests, things like that, especially working in groups, you should be getting together in advance to say, like, what is our goal? What are we going to make happen? Who's going to do each piece of it? How is it to be done? And have a timeline for when it's going to be done. Planning should be productive, deliberate process that's required of all managers. Managers need to do planning for their year, for their budget, planning for the schedule, planning for how the unit's going to be laid out and run, planning for supplies. There's tons of different planning that goes into the managerial role. Planning is a guide for action and reaching a goal and requires flexibility and energy. Planning also requires management skills such as data gathering, forecasting, and transforming ideas into action. So for example, with my position as a stroke coordinator at Lakeland Regional, there's a lot of planning that goes into that role, and a lot of it is data gathering. So, as you plan for the next year and look at the resources needed, you look through the data of the year previously to see, like, how many stroke alerts have we had, how much TPA did we give, how many patients went to interventional radiology, and that can help you see how you're going to do in the years coming up. Sorry, my PowerPoint's being weird. It's not going forward. Sorry, guys. I have this bar at the top of my screen that's like making things where I can't see. Planning is critically important to and precedes all other management functions. Like I said, without adequate planning, the manager is going to fail. You can't organize needs and objectives unless you plan for things. Barriers to identifying long-term needs and planning. So hospital systems filling the gaps in healthcare. That can sometimes, there are different gaps that can come up. Somebody leaves a position, those kind of things that you don't foresee. Things with reimbursement, that can all affect how you plan. Value versus volume, revenue management versus cost management, healthcare cost and government regulation. So, healthcare costs can be extremely high, but then the funds you get from government, the things that you can do can affect that as well. Rapidly changing technologies. There's always advancements in technology, and technology is very expensive. So that's a part of the planning, needing to know what's going to happen, what's going to change. I'm actually going through something like this right now at work for myself. We have telehealth that we use during stroke alerts and off hours, where there's a computer that can be brought down into our CAT scanners so that the neurologist can actually assess the patient during the off shifts. It's called telestroke. Well, the machine that we have, it will no longer be supported by the program that's like an outside company that runs it, and they say, like, the technology is old. It's about 8 years old. Like, that's the life of the product. So we have to plan for this machine will not operate by a certain point this year. We have to purchase a new one because the software that's on it will no longer be supported. So those are things that it's a great thing, a tool to have to help your patient be assessed much quicker. But then it's also a cost to the organization and a continued cost because every technology does change so rapidly that you have to be thinking of that and purchasing things more frequently. Consumer focused, interprofessional collaboration, and scientific advances. So factors influence the future of healthcare. Robotic technology, this is a big, huge thing. When you think about advances in healthcare, that surgical suites a long time ago, you didn't need robotic technology in. Now, if you're going to have a big surgical program, you have to have those things. Biometronics, biometrics and smart cards, point of care testing. This is a big thing too. When you think about those of you that are doing your rotation in the ED, I'm sure you've seen point of care testing where they take the iStat machines. It's a machine that Lakeland currently uses, and can get blood and take about 2 cc's of blood in a small syringe and do like a Chem 7 chemistry test. They can test creatinins, they can test troponins, lactic acids can be tested that way. So those kind of things can be very, very costly. Each of those cartridges are close to $100 a piece just for the cartridge testing. So that, while it's great to be able to have that immediate test result when you're in an emergency situation, if you can wait for a core lab is a better test, A, and B, it is more cost effective. Because if you're doing a iStat, you also typically are sending a core lab to check as well, especially in the ED situation. Telehealth and the internet. So I just went through that with the telestroke that I was talking to you guys about. The growing elderly population, nursing shortage, and acute care hospitals. Those are all huge things that are influencing healthcare right now. So planning types, you have reactivities plan after a problem exists. So you already know the problem's there, and then you're needing to plan for it, like work on a plan to fix the problem. Inactivist, which is consider the status quo as a stable environment, and they spend a great deal of energy preventing change and maintaining comfortability. So this is, I'm just wanting to keep things how they are. Things are good right now. I'm not wanting to make any big changes, so I don't want to go back. I want to keep things as good as they are, but not really looking at making any major improvements, just kind of keeping the status quo and keeping things how they are. And sometimes that's necessary to do if you're in a situation where your facility is not maybe financially in a place where you can evolve and change things hugely. So you just need to, you're doing well, your population's, the unit's running smoothly, things are going well, patients are being taken care of, but we're not going to do any big major changes. We're just going to keep things going good. And that's okay for a short time. Preactive planners utilize technology to accelerate change and are future oriented. And proactive planning is a style is always the goal. So to be proactive, to kind of look and see what the future holds and try to plan things out for that. Proactive planning is dynamic and adaptation is considered to be a key requirement because the environment changes so frequently. And like we've talked about in healthcare, the environment is constantly changing. Interactive and proactive planning considers the past, present, and the future and attempts to plan for the future of an organization rather than react to it. So looking at the past, maybe I'm planning for my next winter and looking at staffing. So I need to look and see how were my units staffed last year? What did my staffing ratios look like? What did my patient populations look like? Was there an overflow of cardiac patients? Did we have an increase in ICU? Like, how were our numbers? What were our wait times in the ED? Looking at all of those things from the past and then looking at your present. Okay, well, that's where we're at winter last year, but it's spring this year, getting ready to go in like the winter. And you want to plan ahead. So you're looking at where your trends are now so you can try to help to plan for in conjunction with what you were in the past to what you are now to where you'll be. So if you know last year we got in trouble because we didn't have enough nurses in our cardiac area, we ran out of cardiac populated beds. Okay, I have this unit that sits empty unless we need overflow. So I'm going to plan on training and being staffed to have extra cardiac nurses in this overflow area. That would be a proactive way to plan for a potential problem that you could see in the future. You don't know if it's going to happen, but you know it happened before, and it's kind of the way the trends are going, so you're ready and have a plan in case it happens. So forecasting, kind of, what we just talked about, using the available historic patterns to assist in your planning, examine the present cues and projected statistics to determine your future needs. Like what we just talked about, looking at your past, seeing how things were, seeing how they are right now, to plan for the future. So advocating against implementing a new hospital computer system is an example of which type of planning. reactivist, inactivist, preactivist, or proactivist. This would be inactivist, and the reason is an inactivist would rather maintain the status quo than take a risk with a new way of doing things. A reactive planning occurs after a problem already exists. Reactive planners utilize technology to accelerate change and are future oriented. Proactivists consider the past, present, and future and attempt to plan the future of their organization rather than react to it. Remember that managers who are uninformed about the legal, political, economic, and social factors affecting healthcare make planning efforts that may have disastrous implications for their professional development and the financial viability of the organization. So if you don't understand what's coming down, like we talked about before in um, the way political things can implicate our work and our healthcare patterns, if you are a manager, a leader in your organization and making decisions based on maybe funds that'll be coming in and you don't realize there's been a huge cut to the Medicare or Medicaid funds that are coming into your organization based on some political changes, that could be, you know, hugely detrimental to your organization because you've made a plan on something that has changed that you're unaware of it's changed because you haven't kept yourself abreast of the political scene in your area. So strategic planning is huge. You see this, you hear about this a lot. People talk about, oh, the strategic plan, the strategic plan. Well, this is planning as many dimensions, including time span and complexity and comprehensiveness. So it's really looking at the whole full picture. They're very complex plans. They are long range or strategic plans. You'll hear them called both long range or strategic. Strategic planning typically examines an organization's purpose, mission, philosophy, and goals, and is in the context of its external environment. So a lot of times, most organizations do have that purpose, mission, and philosophy, and the strategic plan really tries to encompass those things that are what our key mission is for our organization, and then what are things that we have within our organization that focus on that we can work on. So an example in some healthcare organizations with strategic planning is one of their missions is to they have a mission for comprehensive whole healthcare to make, or for example, like Lakeland Regional, we use the quality caring strategic plan. We had that created within our nursing area. And the reason for that is the quality caring nursing model by Joanne Duffy is the nursing theory that they have encompassed their overall mission with. So that is looking at caring for self, caring interdisciplinary care teams, caring for your patient, developing unique relationships. So you may have in your strategic plan with that you want to set up a partnership with a local gym to offer free gym memberships for the employees, because part of our mission and vision is for our employees to care for themselves. So part of my strategic plan is to create this partnership. That's an example of something that would be in a long-term plan. It's not something quick and easy to get done. The goal that you'd have to work on and see if you could make happen, and that could go in your strategic plan. You also can put a lot of things with, most of the time it has stuff with patient care as well. So like lowering infection rates, those kind of things can go within your strategic plan. And like I said, like the example of the quality caring model, you're looking at patient-focused care, caring for the patient. Obviously, if your patient's getting an infection while you're caring for them, that's not going to make them feel cared for. So that would be part of your strategic planning on goals for how can we reduce infection rates in our patients. So those are it's making a connection between what your overall mission and philosophy are to create small goals to work on, not necessarily small, but goals to work on throughout the year or sometimes over up to a 5-year time span. SWOT definitions. So a lot of times we'll do a SWOT to kind of look at a problem and help us plan. And what SWOT stands for is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you first look at the strengths. Strengths are these internal attributes that help an organization to achieve its objectives. So what are we doing well? Then we look at our weaknesses. Weaknesses are those internal attributes that challenge an organization in achieving its objectives. Things we are really, really struggling with. We know what we're good at, we know what we're struggling with, and then our opportunities are external conditions that promote achievement of organizational objectives. So things that externally really can help us reach our goals, things that we can work on that are an opportunity to do better. And then threats are external conditions that challenge or threaten the achievement of the organization's objective. So those things that we don't necessarily always have control of, but they can come in and really threaten you to not be able to achieve your ultimate goal. So SWOT is sometimes like you'll see it broken into 4 squares, and they'll do SWOT, and you have a problem, you go through your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and it helps to break that down for you. So simple rules for a SWOT analysis are to be realistic about the strengths and weaknesses of your organization. Be clear about how the present organization differs from what might be possible in the future. So if you know things are changing, make that a part of what you're doing and realize that. Be specific about what you want to accomplish. Always apply SWOT in relation to your competitors. Keep SWOT short and simple, not something detailed, just be short, working together, getting out ideas. And remember, SWOT is subjective. Using a balanced scorecard is good. Strategic planners using a balanced scorecard develop matrix and collect data. They analyze the data from 4 organizational perspectives: financial, customers, business processes, and learning and growth. So, things that you can look at. You could look at infection rates. We were talking about that earlier. So the financial impact of infection rates, that's huge. Like that, that can cost thousands and thousands of dollars to the organization. To the customers, that's your patient. They now have an infection. That's huge. Business processes are the things within the organization that can be done to help change that, and what's the learning and growth that we can do. Sorry. So steps for using strategic planning. Clearly define the purpose of the organization, establish realistic goals and objectives, identify external constituents of and determine their assessment of the organization's purpose. Clearly communicate the goal of the constituents and develop a sense of ownership and plan. So we want to make sure that those that are a part of it clearly know what they own and that there's a plan attached. You need to develop strategies to achieve the goals and ensure that the most effective use is made of resources, and provide a base from which process can be measured. The strategies for successful planning include: start planning at the top. Keep planning organized, clear, and definite. Do not bypass levels of people. Have short, long-range plans and goals. Know when to plan and when not to. Keep target dates realistic. Gather data appropriately. Be sure objectives are clear. And remember, interpersonal relationships are important. So if this is not like when you're in healthcare, you have to remember the interprofessional side of things, because while we sometimes get sucked into our silo of nursing, we have to remember that if I am looking at developing a dysphagia protocol for patients, I want my speech pathologist involved in that. That they're the expertise. I may be the one every day working this with my patients, but my speech pathologists are the experts in that. They need to be involved. So principles of good planning. All plans must flow from other plans. Short-range plans must be congruent with long-range plans. Planning in all areas of the organization must follow the mission, philosophy, and goals of the overall organization. So even if you have like a nursing strategic plan, you need to look at the overall organizational strategic plans. They can align together. And that happens a lot, especially when we'll get into more shared governance. But a lot of times shared governance areas, which could be nursing and interprofessional care areas, create a strategic plan for the clinical side of things. But your overall hospital as an organization and a business is going to have a strategic plan. Planning involves the same process regardless of the period involved. The length of the plan is determined by what actions are necessary to make the plan successful. All planning must include an evaluation step and requires periodic reevaluation and prioritization. All people and organizational units affected by a plan should be included in planning. And this is extremely important. You never want to make a plan, even if it's like a small change of something. You're changing a process with your lab draws or changing a process of flow with a new machine that's being brought into an organization. You want to make sure that you have all the key players there, because it may affect one area of your system. So like example, if we're changing the way the ISTAT lab machines, we're not going to use those anymore. We're going to have new ones brought in, and it's going to change the time it takes to get those labs done. Well, depending on the lab, there are a lot of different areas that need labs done in emergency situations, like your trauma, your chest pain STEMI, your stroke, those kind of things have labs done. So you want to bring in the key players from those areas to discuss their patient population and what is needed and what they need from the lab change and what they currently use and what they need, so that if you're making a change, like I'm the lab, I'm making a change to our process, I'm not the expert in what these areas need. They are. So I want to make sure that I'm giving them what they need with our process change. So tell whether the following statement is true or false. The planning process differs depending on the period of time involved. True or false? False. Rationale planning involves the same process regardless of the period involved. Because a plan is a guide to reach a goal, it must be flexible and allow for readjustment as unexpected events occur. Always have to be willing to be flexible. So why do plans fail? You have false assumptions. You think things are going to happen in a certain way, and you realize you aren't flexible and realize things can change. Not knowing the overall goal, not enough alternatives, inadequate time for other resources, low motivation levels, sound strategies not used, inadequate delegation of authority, not recognizing organizational goals and needs, planning too narrow in scope, not recognizing community, legal, and licensing requirements. So which is an example of why plans might fail? Not enough alternatives, low motivation levels, false assumptions, lack of sound strategies, or all of the above? All of the above, obviously. We went through all of those. Okay. A balanced scorecard is used to select all that apply, collect data, gain clients, develop metrics, or analyze data. It's collect data, develop metrics, and analyze data. The goal is not to gain clients. A balanced scorecard. Strategic planning as a management process should include the following: a clear statement of the organization's mission, the identification of an agency's external constituencies or stakeholders, and the determination of their assessment of the agency's purpose and operations, the delineation of the agency's strategic goals and objectives, typically in a 3 to 5 year plan, the development of strategies to achieve the goals. Subordinate input in the strategic plan. There is increasing recognition of the importance of subordinate input on all levels of the organization to give strategic plans meaning and increase the likelihood of their successful implementation. So this is like when when leadership is doing their strategic plan, they really need to get the direct care staff involved because they're the ones doing it every day. So as leaders, you are a little bit removed from the bedside, and it's important to have those that are in it and living it involved in the planning. It also gets their buy-in, and they were a part of it, they made the decisions, they'll want the plan to succeed. So length of a strategic plan, unlike the 20-year strategic plans of the 60s and 70s, most long-term plans are about 5 years into the future because things change so quickly. So 5 years is about the max you can do. And then the plans can change within that 5 years as well. So planning hierarchy, you have your mission, your philosophy, your goals, objectives, policies, procedures, and then your rules. Organizational philosophy statement. A person should be able to identify exactly how the organization is implementing its philosophy by observing members of the nursing staff, reviewing the budgetary priorities, and talking to patients. goal, objective, policies, procedures, and rules. Your goal is the desired result toward which effort is directed. Objective, how the goal will specifically be achieved, includes time frame and is measurable. Making sure it's measurable is very important. Policies, plans reduced to statements, procedures, step-by-step, the step-by-step process, and your rules or plans that specifically define acceptable choices of action. Rules is part of the planning hierarchy. That's because rules are the least flexible type of planning and planning hierarchy. There should be as few rules as possible in the organization. Existing rules, however, should be enforced to keep moral and breaking down to promote organizational structure. And that is it. Okay, thank you guys.